Hello everybody, I am the Spirit Man, the embracer of human good and analyst of fiction, and welcome to number 4 of the Spirit Vlogs of recently released movies that I've checked out. Just yesterday, I saw the very first showing at our local theater of Detective Pikachu, but I was unable to make a vlog video that night because of the Final Fantasy VII Remake teaser that just came out, and I wanted to make a reaction to that. And now I've made this vlog video the following night, at the time of this recording, but I'll be releasing it in the morning as soon as I can from the time I'm recording this. So here I am, ready to talk about Detective Pikachu, and right off the bat I gotta say this was a very enjoyable film. I really liked it. It had a lot of strong potential to be, how do I put it? To be a unique Pokemon experience, because, let's face it, for a long time, Pokemon has been, like, the most generic anime-ish experience imaginable. You got a few kids with a bunch of fun little monsters going on journeys for the sake of going on journeys, and that was it. At least that's as far as the mainstream anime itself is concerned, and for fuck's sake, that anime really needs to end. I mean, I haven't looked at pretty much any of the new episodes that have been coming out for the past 10 or so years, because, I mean, I can tell right off the bat there's no point. I mean, Ash, or Satoshi as he's known in the original Japanese dub, he's apparently not learned a goddamn thing, or he hasn't developed much at all. I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't develop the slightest since he first started at the beginning of this show, and I really don't care anymore, and I think a lot of people don't either. I would say ever since the late 2000s, the popularity of the Pokemon franchise has died rapidly, very much so, and up until this movie was first announced, the first trailers were released and so forth, nobody really cared about Pokemon anymore. I would think that at least half the world wondered as much as I did as to why Pokemon just didn't die already. Because what was the point of having it around anymore except for Nintendo to make some quick bucks? Just the same with their Mario licensing or their Zelda licensing and so forth. But as far as I'm concerned, those have a lot more intrigue in comparison to Pokemon. So, you know, before we get started, to make a long story short, as we came closer and closer to this movie's release, I had positive hopes because Ryan Reynolds was voicing Pikachu as the secondary character next to this Justice Smith character dude named, fuck, what was his name? Tim? I think his name was Tim, I'll just call him Tim. And the Pokemon looked pretty damn impressive, you know, the CGI, the blending of the Pokemon CGI and the real world stuff, and Rhyme City itself does look pretty damn cool, which is obviously Boston, an alternate version of Boston, because you can recognize the famous bridges with the long, tight ropes and so forth. But yeah, I'm really glad I saw this, and let's get started with the story. We begin, well, right off the bat, it has the opening minute or so alone of the film is very horribly rushed, because before we're even given a chance to breathe, we see Mewtwo, who is a very popular Pokemon character from years and years past. Mewtwo is sitting inside a containment at a lab, and suddenly just breaks free like that when he realizes that a car is driving away, and he says aloud, "He is close," or "They are close." And then he breaks out of the lab, scientists are freaking out, and he launches an energy beam towards the car, and the car driving away, which you can recognize from the trailers is the same car that the main character's father supposedly disappeared from, and so forth. And then we cut to a field, a brown grass field, where the main character Tim and his best friend, can't remember his name, the best friend, are near a skull, a skull-headed Pokemon thing. I don't remember what it's called. There are a lot of Pokemon in this one film alone that you're very unlikely going to remember all or any of their names unless you look it up, or even if you grew up with the show. He tries, at the insistence of his best friend, Tim tries to capture the skull-ish Pokemon with a Pokeball, but the Pokemon just breaks free and goes after him and beats him down a bit before letting him go. And then they return to their town, to their hometown, and the best friend's all like, it sucks, but you'll be a Pokemon trainer soon enough. And Tim tells him off saying, how many times have I told you I am never going to be a Pokemon trainer? I don't want to be a Pokemon trainer. Which is very shocking to his best friend, because everybody becomes a Pokemon trainer, or at least has their life tied to Pokemon at some point, since Pokemon is like one of the most quintessential things in the entire fucking world. Suddenly, like shortly after Tim returns home, he gets this sudden shocking news that his father has died, and he's expected to, I think, come to Rhyme City and collect his inheritance or something like that. He has a brief meeting with one of the chiefs of police, Yoshida, this Japanese dude played by Ken Watanabe, who tells him, your father was the best in the business, was the best there was, I don't know, something like make him proud or whatever. So then Tim goes to the apartment and briefly meets a girl named Amy who's looking for a scoop on the supposed death of Harry, the father's name being Harry and all. I already forgot the family name, but I'll watch it again eventually, so I'm sure I'll remember it better then. And Amy insists that Harry faked his death, or never died to begin with. So then, Tim explores around Harry's apartment, around his dad's apartment. Wasn't their last name Goodman or something? I'm not sure. Tim has a couple of flashbacks showing his strained relationship with his father and his grandmother, who apparently his grandmother looked after him when he was a kid, I guess. And then, of course, like almost immediately after settling in, Tim finds this R serum stuff. They literally call it R serum. I forget. I don't know if they ever say what the R stands for, but he finds this R serum, accidentally inhales some of it, and some of it also gets out of the apartment and infects some Apom Pokemon. Apom being like these purplish Pokemon monkeys with these giant hands as tails and so forth. And then Tim, immediately after taking this gas in, the serum in, he finds a Pikachu breaking and entering and scavenging around, looking for clues and stuff, and then we hear Ryan Reynolds' voice, and it's about 20 minutes in, I think. They did a good job of making sure they didn't rush into the whole Ryan Reynolds as Pikachu thing, and Tim of course is shocked that he can understand what Pikachu is telling him about what he's saying to him, and that they can communicate. And Pikachu is shocked, but also really, really happy. Like, oh my God, it's been so long. You don't know how lonely it is. And It's funny, especially when the crazy Apoms attack, and Pikachu's being both a bit of a coward, but also trying to help Tim out to get away. Eventually, they maneuver around the apartment building, and when they get away from the apartment building, the Apoms suddenly return to normal. They're normal and cool-headed, not insane anymore, and Tim just looks like a lunatic with a torn shirt and pants, yelling, "Watch out for the Apoms! Watch out for the Apoms! Apom, Apom, Apom." At least I think that's what they say, because usually the Pokemon in these stories always say their name. They always say their own name. So Tim, still a bit traumatized and freaked out, asks around, "You can understand him, right? You can understand what this Pikachu's saying." "Pika, Pika, Pika, Pika." "Oh yes, Pika, Pika. You're adorable. You're adorable. They can't understand me, kid." You know what we saw in the trailer, and it plays out pretty good here. So after Tim takes a moment to collect himself, they go to a nearby bar, and Pikachu kind of disjointedly explains that he has amnesia, and all he found was a detective hat with Harry's name and his address on it, and he's surprised to learn that Tim was his son, and that one of the only things he's figured out is that the Pikachu was once Harry's partner, and now they got to work together to figure out where his father is, how his father survived the car crash, and so forth. And Pikachu insists that Tim talk to the reporter girl, Amy, who is an intern, who happens to be an intern at the foundation, the building of the head scientists, or scientists, the former founder of this big Pokemon company thing being Howard Goodman, or damn it, I wish I remember his last name. Howard is the older, former CEO of this Pokemon company, while his son Richard is the very snobby and greedy British head of the company, and they clearly don't like each other. They clearly don't have much father-son love anymore. And Tim tries to explain to Amy what he's found out about the R serum and so on, but Amy has mixed feelings about communicating with him, of accepting his help. But almost immediately after, we see we see Tim and Pikachu realize that a particular Pokemon nearby that might know information, crucial information, is a Mr. Mime, who is this primarily pink Pokemon with some clown colors with white, blue, and a bit of red and so forth, that not only can speak in sign language but also can create invisible walls and items, boxes, etc. Lots of invisible stuff. We had the funny good cop, bad cop scene of interrogating Mr. Mime, including this part where Tim actually plays Mr. Mime's game, where he is pouring him with gasoline and about to light him on fire if he doesn't tell them the information they need, which actually scares Mr. Mime, and Pikachu's all excited, like, "Ooh, this got dark really fast." And this isn't a PG film, by the way. So it is pretty amazing that they went that dark, I gotta say. And it's also implied that Mr. Mime has accidentally been set on fire, but we won't know for sure because it never cuts back to that or is alluded to again or referenced again. So with the information that Mr. Mime has given them, they learn about an informant of Harry's from an illegal Pokemon battle arena apparently, because ever since these British science guys took over the city, they banned Pokemon battling at all, at least in their city, which has supposedly been around for many, many years at this point. And apparently Pikachu has had a past where he's like beaten the Charizard that belongs to the head of this battle arena, who demands a rematch between the Charizard and Pikachu if they are to gain any information. So they reluctantly accept it, and accept that Pikachu doesn't remember how to use his own powers, so he's pretty much fucked the moment that Charizard steps onto the field. And to make matters worse, it turns out the R Serum is being distributed among the criminal rings of the city, including the head of this arena who gives some of the R Serum stuff to Charizard. And like Pikachu's all freaking out and trying to and keeps cornering himself, and then curls up and goes, "Pika, Pika." Then what happens? I think some police show up, or I know that I just saw this yesterday, but some of it is still a bit fuzzy to me. I think these police show up to crash the party, who learn about the illegal arena, and Charizard starts tearing shit up before eventually snapping back to normal. And I can't remember if Pikachu and Tim found at least one or two clues as to what happened to Harry, Tim's father, and that they need to communicate with Amy again. I love it when Pikachu says earlier in the film, "My God, have you ever talked to a single woman in your life? You need to work on it." And I think before they talk to Amy, Pikachu and Tim have this touching moment where Tim explains, I never could really forgive my dad for just abandoning me in my hometown. I wanted him to spend more time with me and all this good stuff. I wanted him to be there for me when Mom passed away, when Mom died from sickness, or when my grandmother had to take over to run my life as a kid. And my dad, and worst of all, my dad did invite me to come live with him at one point, but I just couldn't take that chance. Pikachu's very sympathetic towards him and promises to help him find his dad and so on. And then, all of a sudden, while they were at the arena earlier, there's this strange orange-headed woman watching them with sunglasses, texting somebody, "The boy is here," and so is the Pikachu. And they show up like immediately after Pikachu and Tim finish their private conversation. And the driver's telling them to get in, and I'm sitting there thinking, how about you get away instead of going in? But the limo takes them to Howard, and Howard is the good British guy, the former CEO of this company, who in the past apparently was desperate to find a cure for his disability, where he's been in a wheelchair for most of his life. And he's wanted to find a cure for that through the special bonds that humans and Pokemon have. And that Pokemon are the key to curing all illness. And that Pokemon are the cure to all illnesses and problems and so on. And, wait a second. Maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I think Pikachu and Tim first went to Yoshida with the clues they have, or at least to report the clues they have, but Yoshida showed them a clip of the car crash itself that Harry supposedly died in, and Yoshida assures him, "There is no way that your father could have survived that." I'm sitting there thinking like, is this really help at all? Does this really change anything? That even if you show it, I think it's pretty apparent what happens in a car crash. Just because you show the car crash isn't going to change the kid's mind to find his father. And anyway, back to what I was saying a couple minutes ago. The heroes are now meeting Howard, who shows them a much more intricate and intimate look into the car crash that supposedly killed Tim, showing that supposedly killed Harry, showing that that Harry and Pikachu had both survived the crash, but Pikachu's mind was supposedly wiped by Mewtwo. And Howard explains that Mewtwo is a man-made abomination, a clone of the legendary Mewt from ancient times. And, Pikachu himself is all scared, like, if this is really what I think it is, then we're dealing with the most powerful Pokemon in the world. I don't think they explained that much detail what Mewt and Mewtwo are to begin with. And I don't know if they did in the old movie back in the late 90s, but whatever. So, I think the gang, or I think Howard at least encourages the gang to continue their search to find out what happened to Harry, since Harry was one of the only people that Howard ever trusted with completing his goal of curing sickness, of bonding, finding that special bond that humans and Pokemon are tied to together through. And they meet up with Amy and her Psyduck. She has a Psyduck of all Pokemon as her companions. And Amy does a bit of digging and discovers there's an abandoned lab, or at least a lab that was recently abandoned due to mysterious circumstances. Ooh. And the team then goes there, and without even considering that there might be security cameras around the place watching them, which there are. I mean, how can you make such a simple fucking mistake like that? And I think they see all these clones. I think they're Pokemon clones, or at least Pokemon whose evolutions have been manipulated. Like, the scientists are figuring out how to make the Pokemon evolve faster, to age faster per se, rather than age normally or evolve normally. And that they were doing this through Mewtwo. I think Mewtwo, there was something in his blood that created the R serum, which not only drives Pokemon insane, but also accelerates their evolution process, I believe. And let's see here. They find some recording footage of Mewtwo being screwed around with, but before they can discuss it further with Amy, Amy has been captured by some loose Pokemon who are let loose by Richard from the car. I press a button and evil things will happen. So, the gang fights off the big blue Pokemon guys for a bit. I forget what they're called, but at one point or another, I think they were everybody, all the characters are on top of these mountain-sized Pokemon who look fucking amazing, called the Trigeradons or something like that. Like they were the originals that those clones were made from in the lab. And that they were the mountains, they were the land itself. And while the team is trying to maneuver around, Pikachu accidentally gets shot by some thorns that the blue Pokemon shoot around, I think. And Pikachu is barely surviving, is severely wounded. And then Tim follows a bunch of Bulbasaurs and other smaller Pokemon to a special spot for Pikachu to be healed. And let's see here. Oh yeah, and it was in this moment that Tim remembers what Pikachu was saying earlier. Like, we may not speak your language, but we know how to communicate with you because we can feel what you're feeling. That's how special our bond is, and so on. But anyway, when when Pikachu's about to be healed, suddenly Mewtwo shows up with this dramatic music playing. Dun, dun, dun. And Tim's all freaked out like, Mewtwo! Mewtwo, wait! And Mewtwo heals Pikachu and also reveals that Pikachu helped Mewtwo to escape from the lab to begin with, which horrifies Pikachu, but before anything else can happen, Mewtwo is captured and taken away by Roger! And so Pikachu and Tim separate because Pikachu is, disgusted with the memory of helping Mewtwo escape. That he's convinced he betrayed Harry somehow, and that he could somehow betray Tim or make things a lot worse. And Tim's pretty mixed about this. Like, no, we don't know if that's what happened. We don't know what happened for sure. We can figure this out together. But Pikachu's like, nope, screw it. I'm doing this for your own good. I gotta quit. He goes away. Amy and Psyduck are all confused. Like, what is he doing? Why is he leaving us? But Tim is determined. He's determined to fix everything by going to Howard and stopping Roger with whatever he's planning. And, then we see Pikachu singing the classic Pokemon theme song from the 90s by himself, crying as he is, like, Pokemon, gotta catch them all, it's you and me. I know it's my destiny. When I saw this in the theater, I was crying out, now sing the Japanese song. I've never heard the original Japanese song. I've only seen bits and pieces of the Japanese songs from other seasons over the years. Which reminds me, the very few rare occasions where we do hear the famous Pikachu voice. Pika Pika, Pika Pika, Pikachu, Pikachu, Pika Pika. The very few times we do hear that, I wonder if that is the original Japanese actress whose voice put Pikachu for fucking forever. It wouldn't surprise me either way if they had her do some of the voice work or if they just used some archive audio of Pikachu over the decades. I don't know, but Pikachu actually finds the crime scene where the car crash took place, and he finds clues that show that the bridge was actually booby-trapped and was meant to kill Harry. And he realizes, oh my god, Mewtwo is trying to save us, but then the crash happened. And the person who was trying to kill us was, oh my god, I've got to find him! And it clearly implied that the person who was trying to kill Harry in the first place was Howard. It turns out that Howard is the big mastermind the whole time. Like, Tim tells Howard the stuff he's found out, and almost immediately afterwards, Howard presses some buttons and shows a captured Mewtwo, and Mewtwo looks at Tim with very worrisome eyes, yelling, "Run!" And before Tim can escape, like, I guess he probably could have just run, but I don't know if Howard did something or somebody did something, but Tim is forced to watch as Howard uses this neural brain thing to fuse his mind or to fuse his consciousness into Mewtwo's body. And it's really cool, but very much like the very beginning of this movie, it happens way too fast. I mean, I guess most of the time I'm tolerable with the pacing, but like moments like these where the pacing is horribly rushed, it really pisses me off. We don't get to experience it as well as we could. So Howard, now in Mewtwo's body, explains that that after all his many years of searching, he realized that the cure for all illnesses, that the bonds that humans and Pokemon should have is for humans to merge with Pokemons, which can only happen when the Pokemons are evolved at a certain stage, or at least they take the R serum and they're driven insane so that they cannot keep their own consciousness stable, allowing other people's minds and supposedly their bodies to merge with the Pokemon. Yeah, I don't really get that, especially since it did not happen to Howard. And he also explained, Tim, your father did what he had to do, and all he had to do was take the money I gave him. I promised him, but instead he poked his nose around where it shouldn't belong, and I had to get rid of him. And Tim is, of course, furious by this, but Howard assures he did what he had to do, and now Tim has to be killed too, or something like that. I mean, like, I like how I very much like how sympathetic, but also diabolical this villain is, because he's desperate for humans to be cured of illnesses, even at the expense of their Pokemon's free will. Even though he himself clearly loves Pokemon, as they made it clear. Even though he himself loves Pokemon, as they made it clear at a bunch of points in this movie. And it's also revealed that the R serum is filled inside these giant Pokemon balloons for this Pokemon parade event. And Amy, while all this is going on, Amy is trying to expose the truth that they discovered about the Mewtwo and so forth. But of course, she's a little too late, because now the R serum is spreading throughout the city, driving all these Pokemon insane, and Howard, as Mewtwo, forces all the humans to merge with their enraged Pokemon, and the humans, we don't see much of this. The humans inside their Pokemon's bodies are really confused and really scared. I assume, like, that they don't care at all about being with their inside their Pokemon partners' bodies. They want to get the hell out of there, back to their normal lives now. But not if Howard Mewtwo has anything to say about it. Pikachu arrives back on the scene to help save the day, talking to a Psyduck Amy. We never hear Amy's voice, which I thought was bizarre. We just hear the same Psyduck. And now that I think about it, with Amy being inside Psyduck, why didn't they do the whole Psyduck stress explosion thing that they did earlier, when they had to fend off against the crazy blue Pokemon things? But whatever, Pikachu learns about that Howard is Mewtwo and is forcing humans to merge with their Pokemon, because that's like Pokemon Paradise to him or whatever. And Tim, meanwhile, is trying to get down to the action, but he's stopped by the silent lady. I think he first discovers Roger, the real Roger, locked up and tied up inside a closet, who yells, at the moment that the gag is taken off his mouth, he yells at Tim, "Behind you!" And then you see the fake Roger in sunglasses from earlier, who turns out to not only be the same woman from earlier, but it's a Ditto. And Dittos, for those who are not aware of the original Pokemon lineup, Dittos are a breed of rare Pokemon that can almost perfectly shapeshift into other Pokemon or even other people, with the exception of their eyes and mouths looking really weird. And like the Ditto fucks around with Tim, taking the forms of these other Pokemon while saying, "Ditto! Ditto! Ditto!" And even doing so when it takes the form of Amy and another person, I forget who, and it beats Tim down. And meanwhile, Pikachu has this really cool fight with Howard Mewtwo. He finally remembers how to use his powers again. He jumps back from balloons to balloons, from buildings to buildings, fighting off Howard Mewtwo, trying to bring him down. And Tim, unfortunately, is being beaten down by Ditto, and Ditto's about to... he takes the form of the Skull Pokemon from the beginning of the movie and is about to push him on, like, "Ditto, Ditto, Ditto." But Roger comes out of nowhere, and I think he literally just kicks the Ditto out of the building. But unfortunately, that doesn't stop the Ditto. The Ditto just shapeshifts into something else to fly back in. And, and I remember Pikachu, rode on some Pidgeotos that unfortunately inhaled the R serum and went insane as well. And I remember Howard Mewtwo, when he first came into the parade, he was telling everyone, I have finally found the cure for all illnesses, and now you and your Pokemon will be merged forever, or whatever. So let's see here. Roger and Tim eventually take down the Ditto, or at least knock him out, while Pikachu distracts Howard Mewtwo long enough for Tim and Roger to finally get to the brain, the cerebral neural thing that was on the real Howard's head, on Howard's body, and Mewtwo realizes too late and is enraged, like he goes, "No!" as Tim takes the thing off of Howard, and Howard's mind returns to his body, yelling at Tim, "What have you done?" But Tim just looks at him coldly with that whole, I just saved the fucking day, bitch. And, Pikachu, now that Mewtwo has his own mind back and can speak telepathically, he cannot speak with his mouth open unless Howard possesses him. Pikachu asks Mewtwo, "Please tell me you can fix this." "Yes, I will undo everything that has been done." He separates Pokemon and humans again. He dispels the gas everywhere, and he starts to bring order back to the city. And he also reveals one major surprise, which even I did not see coming. I shall restore Harry to his former self. What do you mean? Your father never left you, Tim. He's been by your side the whole time. And this really confused me. Like, so Ryan Reynolds, because we see Harry literally in the next scene after Mewtwo fixes everything. We see Harry in the next scene being played by Ryan Reynolds himself. So does that mean the Pikachu we've been with the entire time was Harry? That was Harry's consciousness per se? Was that Harry, or was that the Pikachu? Because either way, the implication is that Harry was merged with his Pikachu by Mewtwo, but by doing so in the process, that stripped Harry of his memories, or stripped both him and Pikachu's memories, or whatever. So we essentially never got to know the Pikachu himself, or herself, whatever, because supposedly we've been hanging out with Harry this entire time inside the Pikachu's body. And during the final couple or so minutes of the movie where Harry's on the scene and talking to his son again, every time Pikachu talks, he talks in his iconic voice. "Pika Pika, Pika Pika Pika, Pika Pika." And Tim finally says yes to spending time with his good old dad. And the past is behind us, and Amy's got a brand new job, and Howard is being locked away for crimes against humanity while his son is trying to be a more decent person, because his son admits, "Despite all the problems we've had, I guess the biggest one was that I didn't spend enough time with him. I didn't try hard enough to help him. He might not have ever done this if I had." You gotta learn, man. You gotta learn. And also, I stayed till the very end for anything, a post-credit scene or even just a mid-credit scene, but no, nothing. Just some fancy anime-style credits with the original designs of the Pokemon from their respective anime episodes, whatever, and then the rest was just generic white credits on black screen and so on. Whew, and that was Detective Pikachu. It was really, really good. I'd have to say I'd probably give this a solid B at the most. And I'm kind of amazed I gave it that high to begin with, because despite all the good stuff it has, it definitely misses other things. Like, it misses more, how do I put it? We don't get to engulf this world, this version of the Pokemon universe, Pokemon world, as much as we could. And apart from the third Pokemon movie, Spell the Unknown, which I love and I highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out, I haven't seen much of the other Pokemon films in a long, long time, but from what I do remember, they did a dang good job for the most part in engulfing you into the Pokemon world. You know, sort of enveloping the world for fans and newcomers and so forth. And in a lot of ways, this does too. You know, you don't need to know every little thing about Pokemon. They explain to you both. They explain to you both through speaking and visually, through both tell and show, how this world works. That Pokemon and humans have literally been connected for thousands of years, especially since Egyptian times. You see these Egyptian hieroglyphs in the early minutes of the movie of Pokemon and humans working together, and Pokemon, some Pokemon being worshipped and Pokemon worshipping the pharaohs and whatever, which I thought was bizarre. But why did it only? Now that I think about it, why did it only show Egyptian hieroglyphs of this stuff? Why didn't it show other cultural stuff like medieval Renaissance art or medieval portraits and so forth? But whatever. We definitely should have seen more of the Pokemon world in this movie. We definitely should have learned more about it. We definitely should have had more time with the characters to get to know them better, to fully embrace them. And but there were some really good actors in this. Some really promising actors in this. You know, the actress who plays Amy and Justice Smith as Tim, and the guy who plays Howard or Roger or whatever. And, you know, I like the idea of there are indeed some corrupted Pokemon out there. In this case, the Ditto, who served Howard without question. Except unless he had to ask it with Ditto. 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 And Ryan Reynolds was great as Pikachu. I really enjoyed him as Pikachu. Personally, for me, I would not have him have the detective cap, you know. I mean, sure, he can have his caffeine addiction, he can have his coffee addiction, whatever. I thought that was funny. That was cool. But he does not. Even if this is called Detective Pikachu, he doesn't need to have his hat on as much as possible. I loved it a lot more when he did not have his hat on, because then he looked like Pikachu, he felt like Pikachu, and so forth. And I do like how even though there's that one moment where we should have heard Amy's voice coming out of Psyduck, but we didn't. I did like how, you know, we can just interpret how the other Pokemon were talking to Pikachu or to Tim or whatever throughout the film. And, you know, like I said earlier, there were some moments, particularly in the very beginning of the movie, and then with Howard possessing Mewtwo, that were very badly rushed. I mean, like, there had to be a way. I'm sure there was a way to extend this, but I don't know if it had to do with, of shooting schedules or whatever. Like, no, we're going to shoot this like this and that now, and we're going to put it together like this and that now. But you know, it's just a good thing that I notice certain things like that I take note of that. Not necessarily because they're the worst problems ever, but they're just big enough problems that really weigh the film down and don't help you to become engrossed in what's happening if it's all happening way too fast. If you know what I'm saying. And like I said before, the villain was diabolical and worth sympathizing over too, because, you know, he was corrupted. He corrupted himself into thinking that. I need to see this again to be sure, because it was like he was corrupted. He corrupted himself into believing that humans and Pokemon did have a special bond, but ultimately humans were superior and had to be forcibly merged with Pokemon to overtake Pokemon's own souls, essentially their own free wills and so forth, their own minds. I wish that there had been more hints about it. There had been more allusions to that. But yeah, everything else was really, really good, a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to what they do in the sequels to come. I mean, hopefully we won't have to wait more than a couple more years for the first sequel, but we'll see how that comes along. there's a lot more that this film could have had that it didn't, but at the same time, there's a lot it did have, and I enjoyed every moment of it. And happy to have Ryan Reynolds in a much more family-friendly thing as opposed to Deadpool. Let's see, anything else? I guess to end this, I gotta reiterate what I said in the beginning, that, well, basically, it's good that something like this has come around to finally bring Pokemon back in the limelight properly and appropriately, because, let's face it, for a long, long time now, Pokemon is just not what it used to be. It's just nowhere as special as it used to be, if it was ever special at all. I'm sure folks can argue forever that it was just another American, as far as the American dub, the famous or infamous American dub goes, it was just another Americanized anime product that got a lucky break for years and years to this day. But at least we have something as unique and distinctive as this, with very impressive aesthetics and, solidly written characters and so forth. I'm also glad that this movie has a decent score on Rotten Tomatoes, 68% currently. Hopefully it will get a little higher over time. Either way, this has literally been the most highly rated video game adaptation film to date. Like, no other video game film has come close to it. But I really enjoyed seeing this movie, and it had a lot of promise and still has on its own, and I'm really looking forward to what more comes in the future. Okay, so I've been rambling on enough about this movie, but it was all well worth it, and got lots more to do very soon, and thank you all for sticking around with me till the end. I am the Spearman, the embracer of human good and analyst of fiction, wishing all a good night or good day whenever you're watching this, and I'll see you all very soon, and Pika Pika to all! Alright, bye everybody.